renderforest.com.
Hi all, I'm Trisha Peach, host of the Peach Buzz, and I want to invite you in today to a place that is one of my favorite on earth. This is my backyard gazebo, and behind me is the pond. The pond has a little, waterfall. If I can get my head out of the way, we've got some flowers down there, and there's some fish in the pond, and there's my hammock behind me. This is one of my favorite places on earth to go. I love coming out here even at night to look at the stars, and I thought this might be a peaceful place to talk about a tough subject, but it's one that I think we need to approach and be blunt. We need to talk about, as kids pastors, as ministry leaders, should the schools reopen or not? First off, I want to say, anyone who's in kids ministry, you do have a vested interest, and here's why. We do base our kids ministry programs right along with the schools programs, September through May or August through May. We have our back to school outreaches. All of that follows right along with the school system. So we will probably be judged if the schools all shut down and we keep kids ministry running. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Secondly, we love kids. We're in kids ministry because we love kids. We have a vested interest. Now, I have even more of a vested interest because, my own kids attend school, and I am a substitute teacher. So I'm in schools a lot, and I love it. So let's talk about the pros and cons of reopening the schools come August, September. Here in Wisconsin, it's September, but I know a lot of states it is August. So, number one, the pro that a lot of people are looking at first is hopefully slowing down the spread of the virus. I think we all understand at this point that until we have a vaccine, there's no eradicating the virus entirely. That's just not going to happen. I wish we could. That would be fantastic, but I don't see that happening. So we're talking about slowing the spread of the virus and keeping it away from the people most at risk of dying. Now, science has been showing us, at least the early studies, the preliminary studies, that small children typically are not as susceptible and usually do not have it as severe as adults. Some studies are showing that the common flu is worse for young children than COVID. However, here's the problem. These young kids will probably have contact with their grandparents, their great-grandparents, and these people, or people with pre-existing conditions, would not have those good young lungs and might pass away from it. So a pro would be to slow down the spread of COVID-19 and maybe even save some lives of our elderly and people that have compromised immune systems. And I am aware there are even younger people, and I think in Wisconsin, one child that has passed away from COVID-19. So that would certainly be a pro to keeping all of our schools shut down and doing only online at home. A con that I see, because I do substitute teaching, is some kids have a really tough time. They struggle with virtual school from home. Now, some might say, well, they just have to get used to it and they'll get over it. I fear that some of them may be losing ground quite a bit the longer that this goes on, that they may not be learning all of the things that they need to learn. And from a parent perspective, this is a parent perspective here. My son is going to be a senior this next year in high school, and he wants to take chemistry and hands-on physics. He is so excited for advanced physics. And we've been saying, how would he be doing chemistry and advanced physics at home? I mean, his teachers are fantastic. They're phenomenal. I love his teachers. I just don't know how he would be able to do all the lab experiments from home. That concerns me. I am concerned about kids that may have special needs that are not handling a virtual environment as well as we may have hoped. Some kids, that's not the primary way they learn. I would also say another con to think about, there are major studies by psychologists saying that too much isolation can be very bad for kids, where they're not associating with their peers, they're not face-to-face. We already had that issue with too many kids on screens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never having human interaction. And this is a problem, and studies are showing that it has a negative and detrimental effect on these kids. So we need to think about that. If the schools shut down, all of them across the country in the fall, if the church does the same, what could be the negative effect for these kids psychologically moving forward? I think balance is really important in life. Balance is extremely important. Countries like Finland and Sweden have not shut their schools down, and they have a lot fewer cases than we do. Also, I do want to make this clear. People will say, this all or nothing thinking. I hope you know what I mean by this. There's this all or nothing thinking. Someone will say, we have to shut all the schools down. Shut them all down. Do only virtual online. And if someone says, well, no, we should shut no schools down, they say, well, you're evil and you want all the old people to die. And then the other one will say, no, you just want us to stay at home forever. I cannot stress this enough. We need to stop the all or nothing thinking. I think different regions may have to do things differently. New York City, that has such a high amount of COVID-19, they may have to shut down. I think they're already planning on it. A couple of school systems in California are going completely online. Some of them have announced they're doing partial, online and partial at school, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Others haven't announced yet. And what I'm thinking is there are areas in Montana where they have virtually no COVID-19. Here where I'm at in Wisconsin, we're in a area that has been hit, but not very badly. Not that I want it to be bad. I don't want it to spread. However, I think we need to look at the big picture, that to blanket across the board say every single school has to shut down or every single school needs to reopen. I don't think it's going to look the same for every school district, and it shouldn't have to. That's just the way I look at it. I want to talk to you about the partial school system, because a lot of schools are talking about this or have already announced they're going to do this. The kids will be in school 2 days a week, and then they'll be home 3 days a week doing online school. Every parent watching this probably already went, wait. If you're working a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-4 job, you know this is going to be tough. Who are you going to get to watch your younger children while you go to work? Are you going to be able to still work? Because for a lot of parents, they drop their kids off at school, little kids, I mean first, second grade, third grade, and then they go to work. And then they pick them up at the end of the day. And some of them are definitely way too young to be home alone. So does this mean that these parents won't be able to work? And if so, there would be heavy consequences for that. So I think if that happens, you're going to have employers willing to let those employees work from home those 2-3 days a week. I see a lot of problems with that one. One that needs to be considered is special needs kids thrive on routine. They need that routine, and any special ed teacher will tell you that. They need routine. Even typical kids that are younger, they have to have routine. And if you are messing that up, where 2 days a week they go into the school, 3 days a week they don't, I think that could be a really hard transition for some kids. Okay, another pro for shutting the schools down in the fall. I'm being completely honest. We all know these kids are a petri dish of germs. You can tell them 1,000 times, stay 6 feet apart. You can tell them not to touch each other. You can tell them to quit drinking out of each other's drink. You can tell them to stop licking the water fountain. They do these things, and it's disgusting, but they do them. I see it all the time. You see it at your church. I see it at the church. I see it at schools. Kids are germ factories. And I'm just being honest here. If we don't close the schools, COVID will spread through them like a wildfire because kids are kids. And I think even, they're talking about having them wear masks and washing their hands and hand sanitizer, and that's great. Keeping the kids 6 feet apart, I think that could be harder. You'll have teachers trying to teach a program and try to police the kids, keep them 6 feet apart. Kids are always hanging on each other. It's just the way kids are. I think it will be tough, and I think it will spread through, and you'll have a lot of kids that catch it. And that could be hard if they're going home and giving it to grandma and grandpa and people with compromised immune systems. That's just the way I see it. Do I personally think we need to close down the physical schools everywhere this next year? No, I do not. I don't. We can have reasonable things in place, but I think at the end of the day, we have to balance. Everything has to be balanced, and our kids could get way behind if they're not thriving in online school. I like the school systems that have said things like, okay, we're going to have an in-person option, and if the parent is uncomfortable with that, you have immunocompromised people in the household, elderly people in the household, they can do the online option instead. So maybe one parent works and one parent stays home to help with the online option. That I think is perfectly doable, but I'm an advocate for school choice. I believe parents should make that decision, and I like having that decision. But I know for me, come the fall, if I have the opportunity to send my children, I fully intend to. Because of the benefits that they get with working in the labs and being with their friends and learning hands-on with their teachers, I really want them to have that. So if I get that option, that's what I'm going to go for. If we don't, I'm not quite sure how my son is going to get that. He wants to go into physics and engineering, and boy, he's way out of my league, probably my husband's too. So he'd be beyond what we could show him, and we don't have a lab at home, so that would be tough. So pros and cons, I think too, it will be really difficult if masks are required at all schools. There are some children that are going to have trouble with that. Specifically, some of the special needs kids, that anything touching their face, it could get really difficult. I could see the benefit in it. Every single year, every single school, flu goes through, hits all the kids. Influenza A, influenza B, strep throat, lice. Ugh. It's like one of them gets it and they just spread it to everybody else. So I could see COVID doing that as well. But I'm not for shutting down all physical schools. I want to look at things with wisdom and keep looking at science and weighing the benefits versus the negatives. I know that in Sweden, what they did is they had all of the elderly people quarantine themselves and those with pre-existing conditions, but the kids kept going to school and the young people kept working to move the economy forward. I guess time will tell if that has worked out for them or not. Where I am at, once summer hit, we had a spike in COVID-19, and it was mainly in the 20-year-olds. They're all getting it left and right, but our death rate hasn't gone up at all. I think it's dropped significantly. So what that means is our 20-year-olds around this area, they're getting it left and right, but they're surviving it. Doesn't mean I want to get it. That sounds horrible. But that's where we're at. So you need to know if your school is restarting in person in the fall. If not, you probably need to say, okay, what is going to be our official response if we're keeping our kids ministry live in the fall and in the spring? How are we going to make it safe and reassure parents that, because that's going to be hard. You got the school saying it is not safe to meet together, but then you're going to keep meeting together, which our church intends to. We intend to keep, we've gone back to meeting in person, 6 feet apart. We use hand sanitizer, that kind of thing. We intend to keep meeting in person. So you need to think ahead on how you're going to deal with that. If you are a parent, you need to think about what are the things that my kids are still going to need that they're not going to get anymore. Whether or not the schools reopen, most of them are saying there won't be any sports. So how are they going to get active and get out and get some fresh air and sunshine? And I take my kids to a kickboxing class, and everything is wiped down, sanitized, and each person has their bag, and no one gets within 6 feet of each other. So there are ways to do it, but you have to think too, how am I going to keep my kids social? How are I going to teach them how to interact with each other? So I am curious to know your opinions. You thinking we shut it all down and do virtual for the next year? Are you thinking keep them all open and see what happens? A mix of both? Are you wanting to do the 3 days on, 2 days off? What are your thoughts? I really want to know, especially from people that are in different parts of the country. I'm in central Wisconsin. We have not been hit anywhere near as hard as Michigan or Illinois. So I know places like California, you guys, you've been hit so hard. New York City, even some of the people on here that watch from other countries. What are you thinking about this fall? Are you hoping it opens? Are you hoping not? And then how will your children's ministry respond? All right, remember to like and subscribe. Subscribe down below. And I want to hear your thoughts. As always, see you next week on the Peach Buzz. Bye.